Ryan.
Hello, Rachel.
How are you?
I am doing fine and dandy, like sweet and sour candy. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that, Ryan. I'm doing okay.
She's doing just O and K. What's in between those two letters? We'll find out during this discussion. Is it YUM? Maybe it is, but it's that twice. So YYUUMM. A very weird way to spell yum yum, but here we are, saying fine and dandy like sweet and sour candy. When was the last time that you had some sweet and sour candy?
I remember the last time I had sour candy. Because I had... No, it was probably around the same time, like last week. Had... across a couple of days, some sour worms and some gummy bears.
There you go. Rachel knows. I haven't had any in a little while. You know what I haven't had in a while either?
Didn't you have some of the gummies when we had people over for board games?
I had more of the chocolate, so I guess so. I guess we'll count that. We had some friends over for board games, and we have some friends over with us now, our patrons who are listening to this episode first, our good dear friends on the patrons. We call them the yumlings because they're extra yum, because here on this podcast...
They know what they're special Patreon only.
Yeah, oh yeah. But here on this podcast, known as Yum Yum, we discuss episodes of science fiction television, and we have covered a few. Star Trek Discovery is where the name came from. We have done Babylon 5, Space Above and Beyond, but what are we watching now, Rachel? What are we analyzing, reviewing, and chatting about?
The Expanse, which we are both watching for the first time. And we are now in season 4, part of the Amazon era.
It's a new era for The Expanse, Amazon, everything has changed. We have aspect ratio differences, the color grading is new and exciting and cold and not at all vibrant. We have cast members that are no longer here and new ones that are, but let's not forget a huge difference. This is a biggie, which is every now and then they swear a little bit more. Just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more spice.
Alex got one in during this episode. That's something. That's something. They film on physical locations now. That's something. Yep. That's something.
There have been changes, and we've been noting them as we come across them. But one thing that we note every single episode, even though I don't enjoy it most of the time, is the explanation of what yum yum is. So Ryan, let's hear it.
Okay, Rachel, I'm ready to hear it from you. No, I shall take the mighty burden. Yum Yum was a moment, a line of dialogue, a thing that was written, then acted out, filmed, and then distributed in Star Trek Discovery.
Cost several $100 at least to create.
Oh.
Between the time that it took to write, perform, edit.
It, in fact, cost millions of dollars because when they read the script, the producers, they gave whoever that person was a raise. They said, you deserve the entire budget of the episode for coming up with such a magnificent line and inspiring future generations. And we are those future generations, you see, because we were just so overwhelmed, so overcome with emotion from Yum Yum. Some may think that it's a silly line, a stupid line, but we think it's an inspirational line, a horny line, a funny line, and again, a seminal piece of entertainment. Nothing was the same again, and we're here as examples of how nothing was the same.
And we're here to see whether anything in this episode of The Expanse lives up to that
Well, I think we need to find out what episode it is that we're talking about. It is Season 4, Episode 4. Do you ever get a little bit of a kick when you get up to the episode number that's the same as the season number?
Yeah.
There's a beauty here when you see S4, E4 next to each other.
Like a symmetry.
There's a symmetry. On IMDb, I am reading the description from. It's the same on the Blu-rays as it is on IMDb, which is a purely tragic affair because I love the days in which physical media had their own descriptions.
We were just spoiled with Babylon 5.
We were spoiled with Babylon 5. We were spoiled with Space Above and Beyond. But don't worry. The IMDb descriptions, they aren't spoiling anything here. As it states, Retrograde, the episode, Season 4, Episode 4, is as such, Drummer and Ashford confront a dangerous person from Naomi's past. Murtry hunts down a target. Bobby makes a life-changing confession.
I'd be willing to keep this just between us.
You would? Thank you, sir. It will never happen again, I promise.
No. What I meant is, you could make it happen again, right?
Did this episode have anything that we would say is yum yum? Things that would make us lick our lips, throw our hair back, things that maybe were a little bit more than arousing. Perhaps they were in fact just so that it made you just grunt out a yum yum. Rachel, was there anything for you in Retrograde?
Well, I'm going to go with my automatic Amos pick first because it was very easily him being shirtless in the med bay.
That was my pick. There was not only him being shirtless and buff and beating people up and trying to beat people up and so on.
Straining against the restraint.
It's him at the end, him standing there, and you just see his chest and his whole entire torso.
He's rippling.
Breathing in and out and just flexing those muscles. Wow. I'm not into men, but this show, it's filled with beefcakes. And I'm hungry. And this is all they're giving me. This show has beefcakes and babes, but the ratio goes far more into beefcakes than it does with babes. And all of the women are babes, but the show is very much interested in the fellas.
Yeah.
And as a woman yourself, does that satisfy you when you watch a sci-fi series that promises horniness that it is mainly looking at it?
Well, as a straight woman, I do appreciate it.
Yes, as a straight woman, I mean, yes, exactly. They're all fine specimens. Now, did you have a normie, non-Amos pick? Because Rachel always has her Amos selection because she's such a fan of the character. Such a nuanced character, detailed, loves the themes that he brings, the metaphors, the allegories, all of the heady stuff. That's why Rachel loves to objectify him every episode. But do you have a other thing that you were drooling over?
No, nothing stands out as much. Are you going to make me give a pity pick?
No, you just led with I'll start with.
Well,
making
it
so feel like it is obvious, and we shall be moving on. Now, do you have anything to say up top about this episode? What is your first gut reaction to it? We have just finished watching it. We've sat on it for a little bit, and now we're here to talk. I don't know what you feel about this episode.
I'm feeling mixed about this episode because I kind of enjoyed it more than the last episode. But functionally, it's not a whole lot different than the last one. So I'm interested to see if sort of the underpinnings of those feelings come out in our discussions.
It's very much difficult with season 4 in comparison to the others to judge an episode on their own. Because
it's not designed to be viewed like that.
Everything is of one big piece. And the the episodes themselves can be good, can be great even, but how much are they going to evolve, adapt, change into
They're
something?
not designed to stand on their own.
Retrograde is an episode that I think is the best we've seen in the season thus far. I had a pretty great time with it overall. I am getting more of what I am craving from the show. There were deeper conversations had. There was exploration of the themes, and the messages were very clear cuts, but
There were also plenty of fuck yeah moments as well.
It was an entertaining episode. The heroes were heroes, the villains were villains, and yet there was still time for moral ambiguity. We were fleshing things out, and all of this was done in a way that is entertaining. It wasn't as dry as previous episodes. It wasn't as plodding, and it wasn't as shallow in my eyes. So this is a step up from what we have been getting in the season, but it isn't, in my perspective, a spectacular, fantastic episode, especially for this series as a whole. I think it's just another one where it's just fine.
Incrementally better than the previous one. And honestly, I am I'm surprised with how far we've come with Avasarala, because there was a time where you would just lose yourself whenever she was on screen. You got so excited. And now we have moments of her being just full swearing mode, berating Holden, and having a political interview in the background, which, in season 1 and 2, you would have fucking loved so much. It would have been the highlight of the episode.
Not just you as well. When we did season 1, it was the life raft that we held on to. Oh,
it was
this vibrant character, character that lives in a world I'd rather be in. Yes,
of the show has changed so much that we are not nearly as excited by, in your phrasing, her being a shitty politician, which I disagree with.
I put that in my notes.
I
wrote,
think she's just being a politician, and that's automatically some level of shittiness.
We've seen her be shitty like this before, and the series itself was condemning her, was wagging its finger at her, and that's why I say shitty, because we've seen her
using
move.
the image of the general that she didn't know or like was shittier.
Oh, but I'm saying her this season is just, we are seeing her as a shitty politician. When she used the Admiral's legacy as a means to an end, it was a bad thing. But in season 2 and 3, she was justified in what she was doing, and what she was doing was for a grander good that we could all get behind. But now it is very much about keeping her position. That's what it's about.
It's about her and her being right.
Yes.
It really, Erin Wright really poisoned the well of Earth First attitude for her.
And unlike with Erin Wright, Gal isn't even in this episode. Christian's barely in this episode, but unlike with Erin Wright, Christian
really
is
just
truly enjoying the sparring match, enjoying taking down the enemy in front of her. Because
we knew that because we knew her, and she upfront said as much in the last episode.
That was a thing that I liked about the Erin Wright dynamic, is although he was her adversary, someone working against her, she was on the back foot, and even when she was the one who was winning against him,
she never fully got the upper hand with him.
And even when she did, there was
it was at a cost.
There was a sense of resignation to it, because she liked him. In a weird way, they were colleagues. He was somebody that she molded. He even said that. He even used that as a justification for why he did everything he did. And yet with Gao, there is no familiarity there. There is no personable relationship. There is no camaraderie in their ideology, or they don't even have what you would consider to be a working relationship. Like, what's your attitude and feelings of what we've been given thus far of their dynamics as peers? Nothing other than they are against each other. While with Ehrenreich and Christian, there was at least the guise of they were in agreement. And I think that is fascinating for Christian this season, and it really puts you in an awkward position where we've seen her do morally duplicitous, grey, shady stuff before, and yet we were rooting for it then. But in this season in particular, yes, I'm with her. I want her to win, but at the same time, they are, at least in my mind, framing her as very shitty. Like you just said a moment ago, she only really gets those 2 moments. But the fact that she gets so little in this episode says so much to me, which is both instances are her losing control while still trying to maintain control. Like, she's trying to wrangle in Holden, but all she's doing is screaming at the top of her lungs hysterically at a person who cannot answer her and does not need to follow her orders because she's not there. And then when she's in the interviews, all we are getting is the persona she's putting on, a persona that we know and Bobby knows is a lie. This false modesty that she has.
It is an interesting journey that we've been on with Christian, because in a way we judged her more when we didn't know her. When we had that situation where she led to her supposed friend being killed, and her investigating that, and all of those aspects of the sort of internal conflict at the UN before things really erupted. And now we're getting to see her play politician more publicly. And in a way, we judge her more harshly for that, because she's no longer in the shadows. She's the representative of Earth to the galaxy. And we see her being a shit cunt.
She hasn't changed, is the issue at hand. We will get that brought up by our new antagonist in the episode that comes in at the end. He comes in and he gives a big speech at the end, but she saw Earth almost get destroyed by figures who kept up the status quo, who kept enabling a system that she has lived in, and now she's in charge and she is continuing it. But now it's just for her own personal gain. Yes, she's deeply concerned about the safety of humankind if we rush into things, but this episode makes it pretty abundantly clear that she's majorly, if not equally, concerned about just keeping her position, her power, her relevance.
I had always found her life story to be so inspiring. It was sad to learn that's all it ever was, a story. The truth is that Nancy Gao defrauded our government for her own personal gain.
The melancholy in the air, the desperation, the sadness, the overwhelming sadness of Mars and what Bobby sees and goes through is more honest to me than what she was given in the last 2 seasons. What are your takes on Bobby's stuff at the moment?
I'm not sure right now, because it weirdly is just the same story, but she's doing it with the bad guys now. And I don't know how interesting that's going to be. I'm really not sure. Because I already don't give a shit because it's Bobby. And she's let me down before.
Even though I like this, I can see your point. Except for now she's doing it with the bad guys, and now instead of the system being Martian, Marine, military mindset, it is rather the civilian mindset. It is her living on Mars and seeing that everyone is unemployed, that there is this listlessness in the air, that there is no purpose, there is this, I guess, overt propaganda that isn't working anymore. We have all of the signage, we have all of the people stating the rhetoric, but it's falling upon deaf ears. It's falling upon a people like herself who no longer believe in the Martian dream. And that, to me, works more so because we have had successfully shown to us the strength, resolve, and convictions of Mars through the series. So to see that start to unravel and to have a boots on the ground point of view on it, not just a boots on the ground, but just ordinary people's look on it, is truthful to me rather than what we could sum up as like the typical Bobby plot of like Bobby finds herself in a ludicrous situation, has to betray her own people and do the right thing only for no one to appreciate it. But what else is going on with Bobby? So we say that that's like the overarching, like grand strokes, big brushstroke things, but what is her course of action in this? What does she do after what happened last?
Again, she tries to do what may be considered the right thing and reports herself to her boss. Because she knows that she can't go back to the cops. But then her boss goes to the cops because she quits anyway. The detective, the dirty detective, comes and because she called him and she accepts the job offer, but now it's full-time.
Don't forget the important bit in between, which is
she loses her shit at her nephew?
The boss wants the corruption. He argues the same viewpoint as the corrupt cop, thus showing that even this nice person who was praising her for being a good worker and a part of the system and helping Mars and having expertise is someone who doesn't believe in that stuff either. Isn't that interesting? And it's a follow-up, a further deepening of the ongoing dialogue about Mars's situation. And how does that make you feel at the end of this episode with what we get? How do you feel? It doesn't
really make me feel anything because it was just so obvious.
I can't argue against that. I can only say that it worked on my end a bit more. But I did sigh when he was basically using the same speechifying as the last episode. I did kind of go, oh, they're hitting us with this central conceit for Mars again. While other moments within the episode did that far more successfully, like how veterans are treated and that there are no jobs because we don't have the military involved in our society anymore. It's no longer the leading force, so we don't have...
All of these vets have been let go. Because they're not needed.
They are disposable. You served your function, and like the ships and the tools and the equipment, you're going to sit there and rust and fade away and break apart. So why not let others use that? Use these tools, use these weapons, use these ships, use you soldiers, for things that require that. Maybe the OPA could use your skills. Maybe this faction over here or this faction over here. Maybe. But I don't know. I guess I'm warming up to the Bobby stuff because it's the most we've gotten of the Martian
I'm glad
identity.
It's not the same. It's not the exact same as the last 2 seasons, so I appreciate that much.
What do you feel about the boyfriend guy? Well, I say boyfriend, but her fellow her fellow Marine.
I feel like he's going to keep flitting in and out. I hope they get to fuck. I think that would be good for Bobby.
I wish he was a character.
Yeah.
He's boring as fuck. I couldn't tell you his name. I couldn't tell you anything about him other than what he is representing, which is a mirror to Bobby. He's someone that's like her.
Up there as a function. Not there as a person.
I can tell you most likely what he'll get up to, which is he will, despite everything that's going on, he will still believe in the Martian dream. That's my take on him. That's my read. And if I'm mistaken, I'll take it and I'll admit my arrogance here. But I look at him as a nice dude who Bobby will get romantic with, maybe sexual with, and then he's going to break her heart, or maybe she'll break his, with the fact that they are so opposed. He will think that, oh, I've got a job, and that means I can contribute to society because things can still work out in the end. And Bobby, with what we've seen at the moment, is so heartbroken and is so over it that she cannot back that anymore. But I wish he was a character. Like, he's probably. I know I use this as a prop to beat up the show, but is he any different to Havelock? Is he any different in terms of just how blatant his purpose is and how shallow his implementation is? Like, who is he? Could you tell me anything about him? Like, what's your opinion on the character? Do you have an opinion on the character himself? Not what the function is. Do you have any thoughts and opinions on his character?
Nope.
Why is that? He's been given as much time as certain other people in this season that we have feelings about.
That's not part of his purpose. It's simple as that. We've already said it, basically. He's there to mirror Bobby. He's not there to be his own person. What more do you want to say about Bobby accepting the job? I gave the overview on what leads her to do it. And I said that I'm more interested in it than her previous arcs. I don't know what they're going to do, but I will add that I'm scared that it's going to be Miller on Ceres kind of stuff.
Do you believe the turn here?
Yeah. For the most part, do you?
No. No,
I mean,
it was one of those ones where, although I like the story and I like what they're doing, and I loved her blow up at her nephew. I loved her blow up at her nephew. I thought that was some of the greatest thing in this episode, and the actress really got to let it all out. But when she was sitting in that cell and he opened the door and he's giving her the offer, and now it's got to be full time because she quit her job and everything, I couldn't help but just sigh and be like, we could have done this in one episode instead of across two. That's the thing with Bobby is I joke about how she's offered a plot line and she'll smack it down and say, no, I can't accept that because we've got to draw this out for a season or two. And that's how I feel, where her thing here, I'm sure flows really good in the book because there's probably a whole chapter or two, but here it's 2 hour-long episodes and you're watching her just diddle about to eventually get to the point you know she's going to get to.
That is frustrating.
So it takes the length of me suspending my disbelief. Like, if she did this all in one episode, I could be like, oh, okay. But no, it's spread across like 2 or 3 episodes of her being accepted a good opportunity, like an opportunity, her being all moral and saying no, only for then to get to the thing you know she's going to do. So when she does it, I'm just going, yeah, I know already.
For me, I also don't care because I am assuming that her morality is not going to change. And if anything, she's going to betray them and try and take them down eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I see that more than her, like, rise in the ranks.
She didn't come home to be some fucking janitor. She's better than that.
I don't need you to defend me, you little shit.
Bobby.
You know nothing about the sacrifice I made protecting brats like you.
Bobby, stop
You don't
it.
get to speak for me or decide what's beneath me.
Bobby.
Everything you have
Bobby,
was built
quit
on
it.
the backs of
Stop
grunts
it.
like me.
I'm sorry.
What is going on with Illis? What do you think is happening really with this planet? Because a majority of Holden's story is observing and being told and eavesdropping in on theories and little breadcrumbs and little nuggets of how this technology is spread throughout the planet and that it's activating here and activating there. And these islands are heating up. What's going on is a thing that is often said, what the fuck is happening? Now, with where we're at, what the fuck is happening, Rachel?
We don't know. We don't know. We are kind of assuming that it's some sort of terraforming process. That's what we've been hypothesizing as we watch it. But I really don't know. And I'm just resigned to the fact that it's probably going to be at least halfway through the season before I get any answers.
Is this a satisfying season-long mystery story teasing out of bigger lore and world building?
It feels like a drop. It feels like a drop. Because the tension when it came to the ring was so much more. So much more. And we often have found this pattern of the first half of the season is dealing with these small problems that have big implications, and the back half deals with the big spectacle of an obstacle that they're dealing with. So I'm patiently waiting for the shift again.
I do find at times this to be dull and exposition heavy. Many scenes in this episode and the last one are just characters hypothesizing and speaking in technobabble. And the technobabble theorizing does not get me intrigued. Like in season 1, you had an ongoing mystery and our characters were slowly converging on the same point. And although we didn't love that as much, it was using genre conventions to get there. The detective story, the political intrigue, and the gallivanting adventure. And season 2, you had all of the stuff happening with what went on with Eros and how it eventually transformed into something else. And that was on Venus. And that was more interesting to me because I truly didn't know what to make of it because it was so fucking strange. Like every time it kept cutting to Dr. Accent and he's sending down probes, it was genuinely well done. And it was something always playing in the background while they're literally on the ground touching the things. And it's so in the distance to me, yet it should be at the forefront more. Like when Bern Gorman is told that this is happening, he doesn't care. And I feel like the show treats it as the same reasoning he does, which is we'll deal with one problem at a time. And when that one pops up, we'll get around to it. And that's how I feel about it as a story beat where I just go, they'll get around to it. And when they do, I will be watching and I will have an opinion on it. But for the time being, I don't care about the ruins. I don't care about these evil spires that are spinning and shooting lightning. And I don't care about how they had these weird little bug spur things that shredded up the land and then disappeared. And by the way, can you clarify for me? I'm a little bit confused on the details here. When Burn Gorman landed, or when his ship was coming down, did it get destroyed by the bomb that the OPA people set off? Or did it get shredded up by those little spur things? I thought it was the little spur things.
I think it converged. So I think the bomb went off and that maybe attracted the swarm, and the swarm shredded them and made it worse.
But didn't they put the bomb on the landing pad? And wasn't Burn Gorman and his crew destroyed in the air? I'm a little bit muddled. Like, I've kind of lost the thread. And maybe if I went back and watched, but I'm a little bit confused on the layout of how it all works, because
I thought it was that they destroyed the landing pad and that fucked up their landing. And then the swarm fucked it up even more.
But if that's the case, how does Mercury justify the idea that the bomb killed 22 of his men when it? I'm a little bit, again, I'm sure that people in our comments are clarifying and giving us explanations, but we've been watching these episodes and I'm not always going to admit that I'm the keenest-eyed viewer. There are things that lapse past me, go past me, as do they with you. But this is a central plot point of the season, and I don't think I've understood it entirely the entire time. Like, when we saw it, were you not under the belief as well that their ship was attacked by the swarm? The swarm that Burn Gorman literally got hit by and saw sweep through the town? Why does he care? Like, why does he not think it's that? Like, am I wrong?
Because he's a killer. You can't kill the proto-molecule bugs. So he has evidence that they attacked his people, so he's going to blame them.
And that's what the episode is about with Illis. Mercury doesn't pretend anymore. He is going into lockdown. He's locking down the town. He's shooting people left, right, and center who he believes to be terrorists, and he is justifying it as, I am enforcing justice. I am laying down the land. I am securing everything. They're terrorists. They are monsters. They are evil. They cannot change. They killed my men, and the only way to deal with killers is to kill them back. And
Old West justice.
Old West justice.
Very Belter-like.
We have seen that with the OPA as well, where, and that's in this episode too, the idea that they are evil, they are other, they will never change, and the only way to oppose them is to destroy them, is to maintain the cycle of violence and to keep it going. And what is your after these 4 episodes, what is your overall perspective on this antagonist? Because we have a few different antagonistic figures on the go currently. We have Gao for Christian, which is just one of a political inconvenience. We have Mercury here on Illis and the whole entire RCE, and then with the OPA plot, we will have Marco, who has stuff going on. But what is your, I guess, views on how the antagonist figures have worked, and this one in particular?
It makes sense. With this season, we keep on circling back to it's functional and what its functions is. So we have a antagonist for each of the plots. And it's not a greater force. It's not the proto-molecule, which is refreshing.
They have a through line, which is each one of them wants to blunder their way into something. Gao thinks that there's no point in fighting against the inevitable, so we might as well do it. And same with Mercury, where look what they did. There's no reason to opt for peace and solutions of a much more level-headed nature. Why go against our nature, which is we should just cave their skulls in and shoot them in the face? That's justice. And then Marco has an entire speech about his ideology and how it's very much the same thing of why should we try to change when they aren't going to? There's a through line, I guess, of, and the same with the Mars plot too, where it's like, look how they are letting us down. So why should we follow them into disarray when we can profit off of it? It's a neat little symmetry with these foes, because they all have a different variant of the same type of antagonism, which is great. But I was a bit harsh on Mercury to begin with, because I don't really care for this actor. I think the character is a little bit wooden and a bit of a joke. He's just an angry guy with a gun. I don't find him that intimidating. But I've grown a little bit more fond of him because of just how overwhelmingly immature, hot-headed, and pathetic he is. And I liked him a lot in this episode when he was just going full, I am going to murder everyone in my way. Do not cross me. I was smiling because it was just hammy. I thought it was very hammy.
I agree.
The division has been set within the colony and the RCE. That is something that is an interesting wrinkle on this entire thing, which is not everyone agrees with Mercury and what he's doing. Not everyone thinks it's okay. And yet also within the colony, there's this growing division of the people who want to fight up, like fight against him, rise up, and the people who want to de-escalate the violence, which mirrors with what we see in the other stories.
Sorry, but all of our scopes are currently imaging ground activity.
Fuck about your rocks. I have 2 fugitives on the run heading away from the settlement, and I need eyes on them now.
Fugitives? Who? Why would...
It's not your concern, Doctor. Now, are you going to assist me, or would you rather become the new focus of my anger?
Let's be real honest. Let's just cut through the bullshit. The season's kind of boring, right?
Long-time listeners will not be surprised that I'm not enjoying this because it's so much setup. That's what it feels like. It feels like we're still setting things up.
But the stuff it's setting up, even, I've complained about. I don't really want this, or it's so obvious, or even if they do it, will it be good enough to justify itself? And that's very much the case with Naomi, where I loathe and despise so much.
I was so
that they
happy
did.
when Alex revealed her secret, by the way. I just wanted to get that in now.
But you know what? It pissed me off, because why did they even bother doing it? They didn't even do anything with this story. They did jack fucking shit with it. And when he did find out Holden, he was, as you knew from the beginning, understanding, acceptable, sympathetic.
He didn't even be like, why didn't you tell me? He didn't even bother doing that. He's just like,
okay,
I want you better. I want you healthy. Like, we're going to split up for now, but that doesn't mean that we're splitting up. And I really did believe him when he said, I just want to be with you. And I felt like that was a good,
she doesn't deserve him.
Well,
she doesn't deserve him. She treats their relationship like absolute garbage. This story is prime real estate for why season 4 doesn't click. Because even if you do know what they're going to do with the stuff, or if they go in a different direction, like this goes in a different direction where They don't outstay their welcome. They wrap it up within like 2 episodes or 3 episodes. But it bothers me because they really didn't wring it out for what it's worth. So why even bother? And all it does, like, again, emphasize this so strongly. The short term of it is this cheap drama, but the long term cost is it keeps building up in my mind that these two characters should not be together, that their relationship is fundamentally unlikable. And Naomi is a character who deserves better from the writers. I said it last time, but I like her when she's a competent character, when she's helping out, when she's leading, when she's
doing the stuff with Luciana's daughter, and like that part's nice.
Or even in this episode when she's just paired up with the med tech with Luciana, and they're just talking about brotherhood, like sisterhood, and being belters and sticking together, and that she's going to help her even if this fuckhead over there will kill them both because it's the right thing to do. Like, these are inherently likable things, and you don't have to make a character likable to make them good. So when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, because Naomi does unlikable things, she's a bad character. No, I think she is a bad character at times because the writing cannot help but make her do unnecessary bullshit.
Because it's convenient to create drama.
Because what else does Naomi do if they don't do that? And the saddest thing is, the answer is so fucking much. We've seen it happen, but they get bored. It's like they get bored of it. And they just go, how can Naomi fuck up the dynamic for everyone? And in this case, it's a cheap thrill because Holden reacts as you knew he would from the beginning. Naomi reacts as you knew she would from the beginning. Alex does the right thing as you knew he would from the beginning. And her health condition gets worse to the point in which she has to leave, as you knew she would from the beginning.
In the nick of time.
Like with Bobby's plot, couldn't this be done in one episode? Like, if this is old-fashioned 90s TV, maybe you could do this in 1 or 2 episodes, but they like, again, they didn't even do it that much. I just get bothered by it. While something as simple as tried and true, Amos gets captured, I'm invested. I want to know how they're going to free Amos. I want to know how he's going to free himself. I want to know how this influences the relationship he's forming with Murtry's right-hand woman. I like her as a character. She's a good character. Like, I like her performance. I like her attitudes. I like the conflict that she has, which is being a person and being a soldier, like being someone who follows orders and being someone who has to do the right thing. And we see that she keeps falling on the wrong side of that. And what does that mean? What does that offer? What is that saying? And will she change or will she continue down the wrong path? How will this impact Amos? See, these are the type of setups that are successful, investing, and something that I desperately crave more of, not just because it's the type of familiarity that I just have with this type of storytelling that makes me smile, but because I actually care. I actually care about Amos. I actually care about this new relationship he's found himself in with a woman who you could argue is very much like him.
With the Amos stuff, I'm just not as invested because she feels disposable. It feels like she's going to be the way that Murtry tries to get to the Rossi crew without creating an all-out war for himself, because he knows that if he takes them all on, or even if he takes them on individually, he will lose.
it's easier now that half of them are gone. Because by the end of the episode, it's just Jim Holden and Amos, and he already has Amos.
Yep. But having Amos and controlling Amos are not the same thing. And I think he is smart enough to know that. And Holden says to him that you're not in charge anymore. And I am interested to see how that plays out and how he bucks, like Mercury bucks against Holden's authority. Because they do bring up the fact that, like, Holden's there as Christian's representative. So it will be very hard for Mercury to go up against him directly and come out winning.
I don't know how smart he is, Mercury. I don't even think he realizes that he has this advantage, and that what you're saying about her being this disposable character because she can be used by Mercury as a piece in the game, I understand that and I can see that coming to pass, but I honestly think he's ignorant to the point of not even realizing that he could do that. In my perspective, currently,
he doesn't understand people enough, probably, to do that.
He's not a clever antagonist like the previous ones were. You know what the difference between Mercury and people like Mao and Aaron Wright and Ashford and Anderson Dawes and Fred Johnson and even Marco is he is not a Machiavellian type. He's not someone with a big grand plan. He's not someone who's thinking 4 steps ahead. He's the antagonist who is really good at seizing the opportunity in front of him. That's what he is. He has not thought about how this will all go. He just sees...
He's a 2D chess player. While many of our other villains have been 4D.
He is a baddie who strikes while the iron is hot. Mm-hmm. And that's how he's a reactionary type. Yeah. So that's why I actually don't think he's that clever, because he is startled when Jim Holden doesn't side with him at the end. Like, his reaction seemed genuinely surprised that things went that way because he thinks he's right. He's like, haven't I shown that?
He's also just used to
being in charge.
Yeah, like he's been in his own bubble and he's been able to convince these employees to do awful things because he's convinced them that they're justified.
I think this is a wise direction to take, because we can only have so many charming, eloquent, long-winded speech type villains, or the Aaron Wright type villains.
Marco fills that.
He totally fills in that role. But to have a baddie who just is a shitty guy who isn't even clever and is just seizing upon the opportunities laid before him works really well.
Very realistic.
It is. It's very well done. And it's a shock that it isn't Marco, that it isn't an OPA guy, because you could easily see that being the case, where you have these shitty terrorists who stumble across things, but it's so clear that Marco is someone with a grand plan in mind, or he is positioning himself in ways for long-term benefits.
And we get that when Ashford's just like, why did he go to this big place? Was he asking to get caught? And we do figure out that he was.
He is most likely.
He set himself up.
Yeah.
Because he had a plan, and he is so arrogant that he knew that he was going to get out alive, even though
it didn't go exactly to his plan, because he thought that his ship could get them and then they would have to deal with his men, but things worked out another way.
Because he assumed that they were in the pocket of the Inners. But instead, it sort of worked out even better for him because not only does he get out alive, but he also gets out with the support, or he's probably assuming the support of 3 factions.
No, he is planning something.
We will keep eyes on him.
Well, he will expect that.
And if he breaks his word, he breaks it to all the factions. He will be signing his own death warrant.
If we catch you.
Marco, someone who's been talked about for a little while, someone that we scoffed and joked and said, oh yes, they're setting up the new big bad, but setting up a new big bad and actually meeting a new big bad are very different things. And we had a little conversation about, will Marco be a genuinely charismatic person, or will he be the most uncharismatic person you've ever met before? And I think he's both. He's both. He is so
charismatic, but that clashes with his arrogance.
Yeah, that's it. I like him as a character. This performance is really, really good. It's one of those ones where they found themselves just a lucky person to get this in, because he is so punchable. I just want to punch this guy. He goes on these long-winded speeches and I fucking detest him, and yet I want to listen to what he has to say. This actor I am familiar with. I know this person. You want to take a guess from what?
Killjoys?
Bam! Killjoys. He's in an episode of Killjoys, but he's a very important role in that series, in that episode in particular. So I knew him. He looked different in this. He's far more rugged and roguish in this. In Killjoys, get this, he's a bit of a dweeb. Yeah, imagine that. This guy, a bit of a dweeb. But Marco, what do you feel about him?
I absolutely get why Naomi loved him. I get it. And a large part of that is the performance that elevates that and really clicks that into place. And he is interesting. He's very, again, a logical thing for this world to have happen. This world would create people like Marco.
When you mention how Naomi fell for someone like this, what about him more so? Like, what are the things that were displayed in this episode from the acting and the writing? Because we do get to hear his side of events with Naomi, but
which is not that different than what Naomi said. Really, is it?
It's the attitude. That's the difference.
Because he acknowledges that Naomi didn't have the stomach to be a terrorist. And she left.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to acknowledge that she didn't want to leave without their son. But that was not what he was going to allow.
There's this sense of loss because he wants to control her. He keeps tabs on her. He knows everything he needs to know about her, and he's deemed her a traitor. She's gone back to her inners. There's this derision in the air. There's this sense of ownership with him.
He doesn't see her as a belt, though.
She is lesser than, even though when he talks about her, acknowledges the tragedy that she went through and the loss, but then he goes into this whole speech about how you come to know who are fighters when the fight comes to them, and she's just not a fighter. And yet we have experienced 4 seasons with Naomi where she's fought and saved the day and done these great things.
Yes, she's a fighter. She's not a terrorist.
That's it. And she's not someone who will obey him. That's important too, because that's what he really is all about. He needs people to believe in him, control, and believe in him and do what he says and believe in what he says and does. Mm-hmm. I agree. It doesn't shed too much new light on what we knew about Naomi, but it sheds light on who this person is. This evil, loathsome figure. You don't feel for him. You don't feel for him, even though the actor's performance is very emotional, very teary, very mannered, and yet it feels like an act. And that is the character, not the actor doing a bad job, but the character. It's almost like he has this prepared as something to say and do.
It's rehearsed. All of it is well rehearsed and orchestrated. Especially the monologue that he gives when he's there floating, as they're like getting ready to space him, and he completely turns it around. But also when he's talking to Ashford,
he mentions that Naomi and him were children, very, very young when everything went down. And that will be important, I assume, when we meet their son. How old will their son be? Because, how old is Naomi? Well, she's like 30-something?
Yeah.
Around our age. So I was assuming maybe her son will be like 5 years old. But, with how he frames it, I won't be surprised if their son is like a 12-year-old kid or something or other, right? But why I bring this up is it really makes me look at Marco as a child. Even though he's this cunning, slimy, manipulative, intelligent guy, he is also just petulant in a weird way. Like there's just something about him. He hasn't grown up. He hasn't changed. Naomi has changed. This person clearly has not changed. And he thinks he has the upper hand. He is a master of words, and I love Drummer talking to him and then about him. He is someone who talks too much, and Drummer is a woman who only talks when she needs to and says what she needs to. So, of course, these two are going to repel off of one another.
As well as it being, she loves Naomi and trusts Naomi, and this person did her wrong.
And she sees through his acts. While Ashford, what is your take on him through this episode? Because
I think he sees how dangerous Marco is alive. I believe him when he says that I don't know if we'll get another chance to kill him. And I found it interesting the way that they played it out with Ashford getting him alone and then it being revealed that it was a plan. It wasn't something that he was doing. It was something that they were doing.
It wasn't that Marco was tempting him and bringing him in. It was Ashford playing cop. He was allowing Marco to use these words to lure him in, and it did not work fully. But I think there is a grain of something there, because we've seen Ashford uncomfortable with being the delivery boy, being the lawman of this wild west of space and having to hunt down and kill his own people. And Ashford hears what he used to be from Marco and what Marco says he is doing. And there is that glory, that rose-tinted glasses effect to the pirate life. I do all of this because it's a win for our people. They have all of this medicine, all of this technology, all of these ships, all of these weapons, and they aren't using them.
And you used to do it.
You used to do it.
You were the best of us.
And you helped people. Aren't I doing that? And why is it wrong that I make money off of it? That's how this universe works. Look at Mars. They are a disgrace. They have fallen from where they once were, and we can make money off of it. And did you note this down? The little contradiction of he makes this huge speech about how everything is changing and how even the inners from what has gone on with the ring have changed. Look at Mars. And he breaks down what's happening with Mars. To then when he's in the area, he's floating around, they're going to space him. His whole argument, his whole ideology is they haven't changed any way, shape, or form. The inners are still who they are.
They will betray us.
They're proud. They're not what I said in the previous scene. I love him. I love him. He's such a fucking weasel.
Their hearts haven't changed. They gave us a seat at the table because they are weak and we are strong, and they want to keep us talking until they find enough strength to ignore us again.
At the end of the day, I think we are meant to acknowledge that Marco is dangerous, and he will have plenty of support from the Belters. And we see that with the fact that the two fractions decide to give him mercy, even though they don't frame it as that, because he's going to give up his money. And that's going to be divided up. And Drummer decides that it is better for playing politics to side with them and not kill him. And I wonder if a part of that is, like, I think that what she says is true, that she does believe that, but I think there is also a part of her that's just like, well, if I kill him, Naomi may never find her child again. And I do think that she wants to help find Philip.
There is more than just the political maneuvering. There is a personal at stake for Drummer. And does that make her leadership here a bad one or compromised? Ashford thinks that this is the wrong choice to make, that they have lost their opportunity, even after he hears the constructed reasoning from Drummer. He has this look on his face that says, I don't believe that that's good enough.
That isn't the whole truth.
And or that's not good enough.
We don't believe it either.
I thought she made a well-articulated little spiel for why she let him live, because it was a little bit of a surprise in that moment, because Ashford was the one that spent more time getting to know Marco and seeing reasons for why he does what he does. But
I wasn't surprised.
Drummer pulls, but in the moment, that's how it plays out, right? Like, it's a surprise that Drummer does this because she has some hidden agenda that she's doing it for. That she
failed
reveals later.
for me because I was like, it's going to be an even split, and as soon as like the third fraction that's joined them, I can't remember the name of
Fractions. But no, it's like Linnea
as
in
soon as
Deathwalker.
She voted, she gave him the thumbs down. I was just like, well, Drummer's going to vote for mercy.
Mm-hmm. And so he lives to see another day. He lives to do more injustice in future episodes. This show does not go out of their way to just straight up murder their antagonists.
No, they toy with them.
They toy with that.
I especially think of Mal when I think of that, because there were so many points where we thought that he was going to bite it, and then he didn't.
I'm trying to go through the Rolodex in my mind of like big bads of this show and which ones they have and have not killed. Have they killed any of them? Like just straight up like
none
we
of
kill
the,
you?
None of the straight up villains.
We have the evil scientist that Amos shoots for Prax. Like that's the...
Yeah, but like...
he was a big player in the story.
He was a big player, but he was Mal's underling.
Yes, he was, but he was still like a recurring bigger, like he was still a recurring
He was still
bad.
an antagonist, but
Yeah.
they haven't killed any of the big bads.
Mao,
and Marco
yeah.
feels like a big bad.
Even Erin Wright got to live. Mao got to live. Murtry's still alive, even though I don't believe that. Like, I don't know how Amos doesn't kill this guy right now. He went to go punch him. I don't believe that either. I thought he would have a fucking gun. Like, he asks at one point in these episodes, so do I just shoot him? And Holden has to tell him no. And I no. And I'm like, incorrect. The answer is yes. Go shoot this guy. But is there anything else we want to say more about Retrograde, or are we ready for the rating of the episode itself?
Yeah, I'm ready to give this a yum. Yum.
Will Rachel give any episode of season 4 a yum yum?
I want to. This one's better, but it's not good. It does the thing. It's like it does exactly what it needs to. It's like a C-level episode. It's where it should be at, but it doesn't impress me at all.
I feel like every time I'm giving a rating for this season, it's measuring on the curve of the season rather than being a good episode or even for the series. Because if I look at this as an episode of this series, I don't think it's that great. If I look at this as its own individual piece, I think it's perfectly good. And then when I look at it in the context of the 4th season, it's the best one. So it's this weird thing where if I say yum, it feels disingenuous to myself. But if I say yum yum, it also feels disingenuous to myself. Now,
but I feel like those are two experiences that you've had with the different shows that we've done, where the grading on the scale of the season is very much where we get to with Discovery. Rating on the scale of the show is where we got to a lot of the episodes with Babylon 5
and Space Above and Beyond. I have to give this a yum yum.
Yum yum.
What are people's opinions, without getting into spoilers, on this 4th season? Without getting into things that we haven't seen or things we shouldn't know, is this a popular season? Is this a book that is better than the TV adaptation, or vice versa?
It feels like it on multiple levels, it's finding its feet.
This kind of reminds me of season 5 of Babylon 5. Where we're returning to where we once were.
They thought that they weren't going to get it.
Yeah, that too, like a surprise, like a return from cancellation. This was a much quicker turnaround, but that slower pace, that different aesthetic, the melancholy in the air, and it having more of a communion and return to the first season than progressing with where we just launched off from. And we had mixed feelings about season 5 of Babylon 5, but yeah. It's time to know what the next episode is. The next episode is season 4, episode 5, Oppressor.
Ooh, I think we're still going to be in Murtry territory.
Predictions for what will be happening next time and for what could be going on in the series as a whole or the season down the line. And with what we've discussed here today, what has sparked off for you? What is happening next time on The Expanse?
I think we're going to get the next breadcrumb when it comes to Gal. And I am really expecting it to blow up in Christian's face that she leaked that information. And I am expecting to get a little bit of drama, but not much. I think they're going to be dealing with people maybe trying to get through the ring again. Because they were mentioning how the station is almost done in this episode. So I think we're going to maybe deal with some of that stuff coming through and maybe some sabotage on the station. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of Naomi and everybody on the Rossi.
I would be surprised if we didn't, because they literally launched off, and that feels like such a given that you would pick up from that.
We keep on touching base with the RCE ship that's in orbit. So I feel like they're going to have a role to play. And I think Naomi's going to be really frustrated that she feels like she's been taken out of the game.
My predictions are we will have the debate between Gao and Christian that was promised. It will go badly for Christian. She will make missteps. It will ruin her public persona.
Yep.
She will be caught
even more because
with her
she's
pants down.
Not popular.
Yes, and Gao will get a boost of support. I think with Mars, we're going to have Bobby give in to being a shifty criminal.
I think we're going to have
muscle.
a break from Bobby next episode.
Okay, a break from Bobby for you, but for me, I think we're going to double down on Bobby being someone who aids the terrorists, and she has to really look inward on what that means, and her family life is going to strain more and more and more because that was happening in this episode. But I think Oppressor, the title, is going to really come to pass with Mertry on Illis, where the stuff happening underneath is going to come to a bubbling point. They tease heat underneath, and now I don't know if we're going to have like a Vesuvius, like a Pompeii type thing where that's going to happen.
It's going to be volcanoes.
And
are they creating new land?
If we have such a overt danger and threat to the people, will Mertry still stop them from seeking safety and protection? I can see the next episode being Jim Holden, the colonists, and Mertry standing off against one another, and Holden and the colonists trying to progress, whether that means they literally try to leave or they try to settle on the colony that they're on, and Mertry stopping them at every turn and maybe even trying to take down Holden. That's what I think the next episode is. Now,
I think that's going to be a couple of episodes' time. I don't think he's going to go up against Holden.
He got the shit
straight
kicked out of him,
away.
and Holden took his gun at the end of this episode.
Yep.
I feel like with his type of character, he's not going to sit on that for a while. He didn't sit on the other things for a while.
No,
he
but
immediately shot a guy in the head.
Waited for the opportunity, and I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity straight away with Holden.
That's a reasonable assumption. Now, with the series or season, I don't have too many long-term predictions that haven't been said, but I really want to pick away at what the fuck is going on with Illis, and what do you think the end point of this is? Like, what is the end goal of this? Because they're building, but what's the thing building towards, and what's the point of
like,
it?
what is the technology of the builders building?
And
don't know, because I don't feel like it is going to be another gate. It's not what planet did the jellyfish grow out of?
Venus.
It's not going to be like Venus. I don't think it's like that. I think it's a very different stage in the process that those aliens had set up.
I don't know. I feel like the season is going to be, they're going to go into the core of the planet, whether that means the literal or the core of the technology, like its central hub. And as we go through there, Miller is going to start to take it over and start to become more sentient and self-aware. And I keep hoping upon hopes that he's going to breach through the barriers that he finds himself in as this programmed version of himself. And I think that at the end of this all, Mertry is going to fuck it up and destroy and I think he's going to literally destroy the entire planet with this technology. Yeah. I think he's going to fuck something up. He's going I feel like he's a cockroach. Yeah.
He's a cockroach. He will survive.
I don't know. He's just so I need to die type energy that I hope that he does.
So
that I don't know if that means he will.
See, I'm looking at it as like you deserve to die, and the characters that I feel like deserve to die the most are the ones that don't.
The characters live a lot in this show, like we said. Yeah, I think the planet is going to get fucked up and destroyed because of either Mercury or Holden's inept actions and misdeeds. And the colony is going to thematically tie into what
I also think
Marco is saying about how the inners don't change.
Intercept them when they send the was it lithium?
Oh yes, they were talking about how they're hoping to send send stuff out,
send what they've mined
and
back.
then sell stuff and bring back supplies. You could easily see Marco fucking that up for them too. So that is Retrograde, an episode that left us divided, both of us, and on an individual level, we were both a bit divided on how we feel about this and the season thus far. But you can support our podcast if you have the means to do so and get these episodes early by heading over to Patreon. We have a Patreon. You can find Yum Yum Podcast on Patreon, and if you back us, you get to be a part of our group Discord in which we talk about many things there. And if you're a fan of The Expanse and you want to chat about spoilers, which we do not get to see, you get to be a part of our Discord where there's a special channel there where you can just babble away about, they got this right or they got this wrong, and I and Rachel don't get to see that. We don't know what's going on. And you can email us if you want to talk and contact us more directly, and our email is
yumyumpod@gmail.com.
We have all of those social medias. You should follow us. You should follow us and like our posts. We are there. Yum Yum Pod or Yum Yum Podcast. Everything is included in the description of this episode. And please rate and review the show. Share it around with all of your friends. If you're someone watching The Expanse for the first time, or you know somebody who wants a companion podcast for their viewing of this series, whether they're new to it or old and familiar, suggest us. Say, hey, these two, they're watching the show for the first time and they have some interesting points of view on it. You have to hear what they think about this Havelock character. And then this person who's watched the show many times says, who? And then the other person says, Dmitri Havelock, everyone's favorite character. And then the person that they're telling this to still says, "Who's that?" Do you mean the Gaunt Belter? I really love that character of the Gaunt Belter. Rachel's been very upset during this episode, but at the last minute, she's smiling and giggling because I brought back our good dear friend, the Gaunt Belter. If he was in the center of Illis, like if he was sitting there waiting and he had set up his pirate radio station and that's why everything's fucking up and turning on, that would be the best reveal.
See you then. Well, voila.